Okay, so we're good to go, Liz? Great, thank you. Then I will just get started. Good evening. Welcome to the September 22nd special Northampton School Committee meeting. I'm Gina Louise Shara, and I'm the chair of the school committee, and I will be presiding. This meeting is being held remotely on Zoom pursuant to the modification of the state's open meeting law for the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. Excuse me. I will begin by asking the clerk to please call the roll of the school committee.
Mayor Shara,
Present.
Member Robbins. Not sure we have Member Robbins tonight.
No, I
There
see.
you are.
Hold on.
We can't hear you, Member Robbins.
I just made Member Robbins a co-host.
Oh, okay. Member Gazy.
Here.
Member Seraphy Cox.
Present.
Member Stein.
Present.
Member Levy.
Present.
Member Miller.
Present.
Member Goldman. Not sure we have Member Goldman either yet. Member Agna.
Present.
And Member Davis. Member Davis. We don't have a Member Davis yet. Okay, Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is a special meeting, but one that includes public comment. So we will open it up to public comment. If you wish to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature in the bottom menu bar under reactions. If you're calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *9. Before you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. I'll set a 3-minute timer to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. And I ask that all but the school committee turn off your video until called upon, because only the person recognized has the floor. So first up, I see Kate Fontaine.
Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Kate Fontaine. I live in Wilbraham, Massachusetts, and I am a teacher at Northampton High School, the chair of the social studies department, and I'm also the Unit A coordinator for the Northampton Association of School Employees. I'm coming to speak to you tonight about the Fair Share Amendment. And I first want to start by thanking you for passing or for putting out a statement in support and passing a resolution about the passing of the Fair Share Amendment. And I'm hoping to urge everybody to vote yes in order to support increasing funding for our schools and transportation, and also to invite the members of the Northampton School Committee to join our union as we are working on getting out the vote for Fair Share. And we will be doing a phone bank. And we'd like to invite you to join us, location to be announced, but it'll be on October 19th. And so if you're interested, you can reach out to us via email, and we would love to have you join us. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much for that. I am looking for any other hands for public comment. I give a little scroll through, everybody. Okay. Seeing no further hands for comment, we will move on from the public comment section and go to the next item on the agenda, which is a vote to revise the school choice budget for 2023. And Dr. Pearson Campbell will present that.
Thank you. I'd also like to invite Ms. Bobby Jones, who's our business administrator. She did a presentation for today. So Ms. Bobby Jones, are you here?
I am.
Okay.
I don't have the documents on my computer, though. If you wanted to share the screen, if somebody could do that. I don't know if you want the documents up or if everybody's comfortable looking at them in the folder that they received.
Bobby, is there a particular one that you want to start with, or that would be the best one to?
I don't even have to, I mean, you don't have to share them if they don't want to. I can just review what I did if everybody had a chance to look at them.
Okay, does everyone feel comfortable? Okay. I'm seeing some nods, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so basically,
sorry, Bobby. I'm sorry. 1 second. Member Stein?
Yeah, if we could look at them, that would be great. I didn't see them in the folder until, I don't know, 4 or so. So I only got to quickly look at them. So if we could have them up, that would be awesome, just so I know which one you're talking about. Okay. Thanks.
So Mayor, it might be best if you just put the recap sheet, the summary sheet, and then they can refer later back to each of the supporting documents that go with that. So the one that shows the FY24, FY23, FY22.
Okay, so this is not the projections.
No, it's,
So I've got projections, the FY23 vote, the variance, FY22 variance, or 9/22/22 PDF.
yeah, the PDF one.
They're all PDFs, Bobby. Sorry.
Oh, the 9/22.
Okay.
9/22.
That has FY24, 23, 22 is what you said.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me
Yeah.
1 second. I will share that. Okay, everyone can see it. Yes. Great. Okay, go ahead, Bobby. Thanks.
Okay, so basically all I did was do a little summary recap. So for FY24, this will be discussed further in the budget process. But attached in your backup, you will also see the school choice projection sheet, which Susan had shared with you previously. And it just will show you kind of the shape that school choice is in and the fiscal clip that's hitting. So we will discuss that, more in the future, but I did just want to attach that for now. FY23 is the one that I need a vote on. So you previously voted 3,010,109 to use school choice monies for FY23. And then the contract settlement, actually, we needed to have an increase of 87,730. So that requires a vote by the school committee. And again, that backup is attached in the shared documents that just kind of breaks it down by the increase for ESPs, and then teacher salaries, health services, and tuitions. And again, it's basically just because the contract settled at more than we had initially budgeted for. So the vote would be to increase the use of school choice funds by the amount of 87,730 for FY23, if you were so inclined. And then FY22, Susan had also previously shared this with you, but I wanted to just kind of give a recap there. You had, as a school committee, had approved $2,887,009 for FY22. And at the end of the fiscal year, we had only needed $2,281,930. So we had a variance of $605,079, which is actually a savings. Just to point that back out, that savings is reflected in the school choice projection document that is in that folder as well.
Member Stein.
I just have a question sort of about that too. This is a very basic question, so I apologize if it's obvious to others, but when you said it, I looked at that sort of projection sheet. So is that projection sheet basically the amount of money net we're getting from the state for a school choice program for students that we have coming in versus going out? And like, I guess in this case, it would be plus like a variance. So is that typically what that projection is?
Right, so the projection would show you what we anticipate the beginning balance to be, what we anticipate for revenues, what we had actually voted for, and then projected out for 24, what we would vote for to use to support the budget, the general fund budget. And then that changed to the balance. So it's just showing that we keep using more than we're actually taking in. So we're going to end up with a shortfall. And that at some point, we're going to have to make a change there. Or if we attract more school choice people, then perhaps the revenues would go up. And additionally, typically at the end of each year, we can often, have some savings, like if we did budget the full amount, we may not need that full amount, so that revenue goes back in too. So the projection will change always, but that's the basic premise of it.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And I know we'll talk a lot more about this as we talk about like fiscal year 24 and stuff. But I just wanted to sort of understand that movement. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Member Robbins.
Thank you. So I'm also wondering about the projection, and I guess I wasn't really thinking as close to 23, and we're only talking about 23 right now, but I know a lot of districts are backing out of school choice, thinking about really, because they're in the same bind we are, where the revenues really don't keep up with what the expenditures are. And I know we're going to have a deeper conversation about this in the future, but I'm hoping that this vote doesn't put us back into a bind of making a decision about keeping school choice at the levels that we have now and in the grades that we have now that would project towards a really long future. And I don't know enough about it to be able to be intelligent about it. And Bobby, I know you know a lot more.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that this particular vote for tonight would have any reflection on the future decision. That is really going to be a very complicated, I think. I've been through it in my district that I was in. There's a lot to talk about when you consider whether or not to be a school of choice school. But for tonight's purposes, that wouldn't have an effect on your future decisions.
Okay, Member Agna.
I'd like to make a motion that the school committee increase the use of school choice funds for the FY23 budget by $87,730.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Agna and seconded by Member Seraphy Cox, I believe. And Member Seraphy Cox.
Perhaps this is not a easily answerable question tonight, and that's fine. It's mostly a question that I have for kind of the long term. I remember here, let me say my question first. I'm wondering that sort of deficit that we are expecting if we continue to spend school choice money at the level that it's at now. So I'm wondering how much of that, like how many positions are we talking about? Because I know that there are specific positions that are covered by those monies. And as I said, if you don't know those numbers right now, that's fine. But I think, as we move forward in terms of especially the FY24 budget, having that information would be really helpful.
Yeah, it will. And I don't have them available tonight, but I certainly will work on getting that done because there is a lot to take into consideration. For instance, even though we may cover a teacher's salary, it may not be because we increased the number of teachers. Sometimes they're scattered throughout the grades just enough to bring up the classroom size. And you didn't actually need an extra teacher, but I don't know enough yet. I haven't been here yet long enough to really answer that, but it is something we will look in depth at for sure.
Member Levy.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up question to Member Seraphy Cox's question. Am I understanding the documents correctly that you shared with us that the positions, the special ed ESPs and the regular ed ESPs that are, and then like the ESP salaries, the teacher salaries, all those salaries that are in there are what is covered by school choice? Because that strikes me as a lot of people.
Yeah, that is what's covered. That was what was originally approved, what we'll actually need with the contract settlement and the variance. So yes, that is what we are covering with school choice.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Stein.
Another follow-up question to my colleagues. Good question. As I think we all try to learn more about this. And sort of, I guess I'm wondering about that tie between the school choice dollars and the costs incurred because of school choice. So you should have mentioned, like, you know, it may be that there's students coming in that are spread across the, like, so it's not actually like we're paying for it. And it seems to me, if I understand this correctly, like this is one of the revolving accounts we're allowed to have. And so for whatever process in the past, we've decided that we're going to tag it to these sort of positions for whatever reason. But essentially it's just like, we're using this money to pay like real operation costs, like salary and wages. And we just seem to be attributing it this way because it's a revolving account. Like, I guess I'm trying to understand that piece. And, you know, I know we'll get way more into it as we look at the budget, but it seems sort of important to me to understand, like, we say it's the school choice money and that's what's generating it, but then what choices have we made about how do we map that and strategically, like based on these different budget buckets, right? So I don't know if you could say just something like briefly, like high level about like those elements. I mean, I'd be totally wrong about what I just said too, so please correct me if I am.
No, you are right. And like I say, I haven't been in the district long enough to really understand what their reasoning behind who they chose to pay from school choice or why. But it is a revolving account where you can just, you know, arbitrarily even select a number, say 400,000 or $4 million that you're gonna pay using school choice monies. And it might not be attributed directly to school choice children, so to speak. But that, you know, I really, without looking at the, you know, who we are paying, the number of students we have in, and whether or not they're actually, so if we took in school choice students and we had to increase a whole class, which means we have to hire a new teacher, then that becomes a cost of taking in school choice children. But if we have school choice students and they're sprinkled around, say, you know, 7th grade, 9th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, and they really only take a class size from, say, 18 to 20 in various grades, then that's not actually an increased cost due to taking in school choice. So I don't know if that helped you.
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Okay, Member Robbins.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the motion to vote on this and ask us to please place this on a not so future agenda to explore more deeply. And I think particularly pertaining to Bobby's recent comments. So thinking about a friendly amendment that says we'll put this on an agenda relatively soon.
Member Agna, you made the original motion, so do you accept that amendment?
I guess so. I don't know that we need to, because I think, as Bobby just said, we're going to be discussing this in depth in our budget. So, I mean, it does feel like, yeah, we're going to do it. I don't know. Yeah, fine. Let's just say it. It's not going to hurt anything. So.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, roll call, please, Annie.
Member Robbins,
Yes.
Member Gazy,
Yes.
Member Seraphy Cox,
Yes.
Member Stein,
Yes.
Member Levy,
Yes.
Member Miller.
Yes.
Do we have Member Goldman yet? No,
I don't think.
we. Okay. Member Agna
Yes.
and Member Davis. I think it's at an open house. I think that's what you said, Member Agna.
Yeah.
That is 8 in favor.
Okay, great, thank you. And that moves us to item 4, which is an update on the bomb threat incident that happened at Northampton High School on September 13th. And Dr. Pearson Campbell.
Hello. I want to share my screen first. Okay, can everybody see my screen? All right. Annie, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle Pearson Campbell. I am the interim superintendent of Northampton Public Schools, and today we'll review the high school incident and safety protocols. Review of the incident on September 13th, 2022. The high school administration and superintendent were notified of a potential threat at 2 p.m., was based on statements made in a group text and exchanged involving some students. 911 was called. The district existing policies required a 911 call to be placed whenever information is obtained that is believed to be a possible bomb threat. So the situation can be assessed and appropriate plan of action can be put into place, assisting the public safety personnel. The superintendent consulted the school law council to make sure they took appropriate action as the situation developed, and in communication with caregivers in the community to balance the right of the public to know with student rights, privacy rights, and district security needs. The Northampton Police Department, the Fire Department, State Bomb Squad provided support to the schools. The high school issued a stay in place. JFK issued a lockdown. Bridge Street, Leeds, Jackson Street issued a stay in place. Ryan Road was directed to continue dismissal as they already commenced that process. All remaining schools were dismissed when recommended by the police department. We sent communication to the local newspaper and school community apprising of that day. So after on September 14th, the review of the district's September 14th response to the incident, the superintendent met with Police Chief Jody Casper, Captain Vic Caputo, and Director of Nursing Lisa Saffron. In addition, the alt leadership team met together to review the school threat. Each building held a debriefing meeting the next morning with staff. Buildings met with students to provide support. Social workers and guidance counselors were available to support those in school buildings who had concerns or needed additional support. Please understand that due to privacy laws, we're only able to provide limited information. However, the district leadership took steps to communicate available and appropriate information to the community. The superintendent issued a follow-up message to the school community about the incident. The district administration, including the superintendent, reviewed all communications from caregivers, NACE, and other schools in the school community with concerns about the incident and the emergency response. The information we received will be considered as we move forward because a lot of caregivers send us information, and we'll look at our district emergency response protocols and policies. Our next steps, we're reviewing our bomb threat policy, our safety plan, and emergency communication plan. We review and amend our bomb threat and other emergency response policies so they're up to date. The police department, school attorney, and a special education attorney will involve in that review process. For our safety plan, we created a crisis team. We'll be reviewing the ongoing safety plans for district-wide bomb threats. Police department will also provide training to our schools. For a form of communication for an emergency, the crisis team was created to support district-wide communications, to support evacuations in collaborations with police and fire departments. We also review protocols for teachers. The teachers would take attendance and stay with schools until released to school bus or caregiver. And we'll continue working with the police department for training. What are our daily operation support in the safety of the buildings? We'll continue partnering with the fire and police, reviewing our protocols and work with them to discuss safety in the buildings. We provide guidance and initiatives from the police department. Assessing the building, keep buildings locked. To enter, staff will use a fob. Visitors will be buzzed in, asked to sign in at the office. For observations, as the district, constantly observing our buildings with surveillance cameras on a regular basis. I did speak to Detective Sergeant Corey Robinson regarding our next steps. So he'll be meeting with our alt team, our leadership team, supporting training for our teachers and our alt team. The three things about the vocabulary I want to talk about: shelter in place means that all students, staff, and visitors remain in the room that are until they are notified that it's safe to move about the building. A lockdown is a procedure used to secure all persons in the building if there's some threat to safety. Teaching stops and individuals get ready to respond. Evacuation occurs when all students and staff are required to leave the building to ensure safety is maintained. When we talk about shelter in place, a shelter in place restricts movement throughout the building. A shelter in place is used for a variety of reasons: for a medical emergency, there's an outside disturbance, a wild animal, there's a vague threat not near the school groups, police or fire activity in the neighborhood. We talk about how to shelter in place. To shelter in place means that all students, staff, and visitors remain in the room that are with the door closed until they're notified by safe to move throughout the building. Will be a notified shelter in place. Please stay in your classrooms. All students, staff, and visitors report to the nearest room as quickly as possible. Doors will be closed. No one will be allowed to enter or leave the classroom. All classrooms will continue group discussion, presentations, and when the emergency has passed, the school will be released by intercom announcement. Our lockdown is the procedure used to secure all persons in the building. If there is some threat to safety, our lockdown will be announced via the intercom. It can be initiated by individuals who see a serious threat to safety. All students and staff and visitors report to the nearest room immediately. Doors will be locked and closed. Window shades will be drawn. All activity in room stops. Adults in charge of the room will take attendance of persons in the room. Hold this until administrator or law enforcement. We do not allow anyone to enter and leave the room during a lockdown and do not open for any reason. Officers enter the room with a verbal announcement and key into the room. This is officer and I am coming into the room. In the event of not uniting families, educators are bringing their class to alternative sites. The staff will be assigned a classroom. One staff will be connected to greet or check caregivers. A family communication guide. We will send out a message to families to let them know where to pick up the child for an alternative site. Send messages to caregivers. Students are released by bus, walkers, or pickups. Caregivers are asked to bring ID as listed on the Aspen. In addition, accountability. Keep attendance of all students. Records keeping is important to connect with students and caregivers and write the name of the person receiving the next information. Most importantly, no matter how minor, even if you're not sure, see something, say something. We want to make sure that we're working together to support Northampton community, be a friend. If a student needs help, share the information with the school counselor. If there's an unknown visitor, please report to the office. If there's a propped door, please close and report the principal's office, custodian, any doors that are propped open. Thank you, and we're looking forward to partnering with Northampton Public Schools. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson Campbell. Okay. Committee, any member Miller?
Thank you, Dr. Pearson Campbell. I had just a couple of specific questions about the event. I wondered why JFK was in lockdown when the threat took place at Northampton High School and all the other schools were in stay in place, but they were in lockdown. And I didn't understand that. And then I also just wondered, how quickly is it possible to alert the parents and caretakers, because we know that the rumor mill starts to go really fast among students, texting or whatever, that I just wondered how quickly is it possible within safe guidelines to alert parents with robocalls as fast as possible. That's just my two questions.
So at that time, the associate principal, when we received the information there was going to be a bomb threat, we connected with the associate principal at the JFK, and they made the decision to do a lockdown because at that time we didn't know where the message was coming from. And so that was done out of precaution. And the reason why the other schools were on either stay in place or dismissal, it depends on what time we received the phone call, because our dismissal for elementary school was around that time. And so so either at the time they were dismissing their students, or they had students outside the playground just in case, and they brought the kids back in. So that's why they did the stay in place from that piece. And for parent situation, the command center, which I was at, the police department and the bomb captains and the fire department will let you know when to say, to inform the parents. But that was the reason why. But we know for the next time, we would try to hopefully have a team captain, because that's what we learned from this process about having a team captain in place. And that's why I did the evacuation form now, because when I did the review from the police department, they said, please from now on have a list of name of the captain, which means the principal of the school or associate principal, and they relay the information back. And so that's what they mentioned after the situation.
Thank you.
So it's a team process.
Thank you.
Okay.
Member Gazy.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering two things. If you could share with us who is on the crisis team. And also, I had heard, I'm not sure if this is true, that there was some confusion at the high school as to whether it was a fire drill or a stay in place or a lockdown. And so I was wondering if there's been any effort to standardize the messages or to make it clear as to which one it is. You know how noisy a classroom can be with air filters and kids talking, so it's sometimes hard to miss the announcements.
Right. We created an emergency communication form plan so that the building principal can send it out to the classroom teachers via email, so that we wouldn't be on the cell phone, so we won't be the cell phone towers. When we first arrived there, we also had a discussion between the police department and the fire department, because they had to figure out, unravel what was going on in the building. And I can't say everything because it is also a police investigation, but that's the reason why I'm from that.
Mm-hmm. And how about the crisis team?
The crisis team is made up of building principals, director of student services, the director of nursing services. Our police department will also be part of the crisis team because of the new type of training that is going to go about, so that we can look over our safety plan through that.
Okay, thank you.
Member Levy.
Thanks. Thanks to my colleagues. A few of the questions I had have already been asked. I also just want to thank you, Dr. Pearson Campbell. I can't imagine it's easy to learn a district safety protocols while in the middle of a crisis. And so I appreciate your being in it and persisting. My first question is, you met with the ALT team the day after to talk about the incident and what happened. I'm wondering if you can share what the team and you felt went well, and what we've already heard a few areas that need to be improved, but what went well and what needs to be improved.
Well, I would like to acknowledge my administration, because we have so many new people who come in to support our schools. So what went well is that we all work together to communicate in our buildings on what needs to be supported, to understand like what's a lockdown and what's a stay in place. And also to using our communication form, that document now, so that messages can go out via email and also to the intercom, so people can understand there's a common language. And we have a safety plan, but also to review our safety plan to make sure that it's updated, to update, because previously it was a phone call, but now we have high tech. So either text messaging, global communication. So those are things that we're working on together to really think about how to ensure everyone is supported. In addition, also working with the police department, so that the police department has some new training and that be one of our partnerships. And so that's where the ALT crisis team has come into place, so that every from the family engagement person, from the technology, from the busing, that we all have a plan, and also to looking at the ALT sites. Because if you think about the number of staff that we hired this year, 70 people or more, that we'll really have to think about ensuring that training is put into place so that everybody knows their role. And so that's what they did for each building. So they brought their staff down to the alternative sites so each staff know where's the alternative sites, where's the command center. We also talked about walkie-talkies. There's a new type of walkie-talkie that connects to the police. So these are things that we also looking at what we need for our supports in the near future. So.
Thanks. And how frequently do you envision having training for staff? We received some messages from teachers saying that they have been in the district for quite some time and don't recall ever having been trained. So I'm curious what that plan will be moving forward.
Well, the day after the event, I met with Chief Jody Casper and Vic Caputo, and also to meeting with Detective Sergeant that's going to help schedule our times with the buildings. That's one of the things, coming in my 7th week and asking about when do we have these trainings, so that will be part of the plan. And also too, when we do the budget, the policy and rules, that I would like to update that. So every first day of each year of school year, that be part of the communication. So I've already looked at the rules and policy for bomb threats, the rules and policy for emergency plans, and that they need to be updated. So that's part of the process of looking at updating the plan, and so that makes it much more cohesive. So this is something that we've learned and we're moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My last question is about communication. I completely understand, and you've said that due to privacy and safety and other considerations, sometimes we're limited in the information that can be shared. I'm curious, there are a number of community members who still feel in the dark and feel like, well, there's this threat, but hasn't been resolved, and feel like there hasn't been communication of that sort. And I'm wondering if there's a way, in addition to saying, we're reviewing our protocols and we're moving forward, if there's a way to give more information to caregivers to understand as much information that can be shared safely and with the other considerations. And I guess I'm wondering if in this case, looking back on it, might there have been more information that could have been communicated to caregivers either in the moment when it happened or afterwards when there was a little bit more resolution?
Well, I think during the process, maybe sending a message out that there is something going on at the high school, being reflected for that. But you also understand that this is also a police investigation, and that anytime I send a message out, I have to go through my attorney first. And that's why the messages are kind of vague, because it's a police investigation. And once that is done, then I can maybe provide more information, but that's the reason why. So anytime I send a message out, first thing I do is I contact the attorney. I say, please review over it, because also too, I don't want to put us in a judgment, because it's also that's going on. And that's the reason why. But we can always, I always say we can always be reflective. We can always figure out a way so that we're not in the middle of an investigation.
Yeah, I almost wonder if we could even say, because this is being investigated, I can't share more, just because most people aren't here on this call and don't necessarily know that. So a way to have transparency and clarity without giving any more information.
Right. I can look at my letters again, just make it. Like I did believe, I thought I put it in because of a police investigation that I wouldn't be able to give out information. But I know people want more information, but this is what I can do at this point in time. But we always be reflective. I think most importantly, kids went home safe. I know this was unexpected, and I apologize to families. I know this was stressful, but at the same time, we're also looking at how do we move forward to make sure that there's training, because we have new staff coming on, new administration, and so that we can just every year that has it already in place. So thank you.
Okay, Member Robbins.
Dr. Pearson Campbell, I thank you so much for all the work that you've clearly just been on since this happened. And I can't even imagine being in the first few weeks of your term and dealing with what we have and what we don't have. So I really appreciate your attention and energy to this. My question is around the kids. So I have grandkids who are in the schools, and I've heard from community members too, who heard from their kids about what they thought was happening because they have cell phones, and they weren't really helpful in helping to allay their caretakers or parents' concerns, which were largely, I think, around stuff that is in everybody's minds and everybody's concerns about active shooters. And I wonder if there's a way to differentiate quickly for people's comfort and sense of mind, and for children's sense of peace in a school, to be able to share information that says, I don't even know, this is the expert's piece of it, but is able to keep, I think about it as a parent, that picture that we have of those parents who grab their kids out of windows, right, when they were held back. And I can imagine every single parent who gets a notification who's concerned about what's happening, or parents waiting in line to pick their kids up, or not having their kids come home on the bus. I can't even imagine what goes through their heads and hearts at that time. And combo that with what their children with their cell phones are telling them, and what we've heard children across the country have texted to their parents. And I think it's a huge area that certainly I'm no expert in, but I'm hoping that we're being cognizant of it and finding a way to either reassure kids with cell phones, or give them enough information so that their parents are reassured, or if it's really a terrible situation, to let them know that. I don't know what the fine line is around that, but I want to keep the kids very much in the forefront of not being the last to know about why they're being locked down in a classroom. And I'm sure that's part of the plan that's to come, but I speak on behalf, I think, of need to know, in terms of to not feel like people take action that is inappropriate, or that they feel is really a critical thing to do. Worst case scenario.
Well, I also think, excuse me, part of the crisis team will include from the police department, so we can think about what wording. There's also new training that's coming through the police department, so I think that'd be something part of the team. And we'll have school psychologists, school adjustment counselors on the crisis team, so that we can make sure that we word it correctly, because we do not want to have anxiety at the school, but we also have to make sure that we can move in a certain way. But that's, to me, it's like looking at the plan that we have, and also to how do we adjust it, and how do we bring in people to help to look at our plan. So
I'm actually talking about in the moment, and that's
Yes.
the really, really hard part, isn't it? It's about how do we communicate with kids and teachers. Teachers say, I don't know what's going on, and the kids don't know, but they've got their phones out and they're saying, Mom, see a guy out there with guns. There's lots of cops, there's dogs. And I can't even imagine being a parent in that setting. I can't imagine being a teacher in that setting. But I can imagine it's pretty upsetting for kids. And I know we had another incident today that I was really glad a robocall went out about. But I'm hoping that's very much part of the plan as we think forward. And I have no idea how that's done intelligently and safely and carefully. But I want us to be really cognizant of it, and to know that the first thing that kids are going to do is to grab their phones and let their loved ones know that they're concerned, because that's what we've learned from history, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, Member Stein.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of my colleagues' comments, especially around communication, and also just really recognizing, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be new to a district facing this. So it's a really difficult task, and I appreciate that you're working through the plan and really suggesting some improvements, and open to hearing feedback from the community. And I think that's all great. So I really appreciate that. I do wonder if maybe, this is sort of an evolving thing that every district is dealing with. If there are communication consultants or best practices from national organizations, like, I don't know anything about this space, but I'm wondering if the sort of group that's going to be looking at this could search out what other districts are doing that are effective ways to sort of deal with some of these communication issues. Because I don't know what they are, but I would imagine, given the focus on this and that every district is, faced with it, there is probably some growing body of knowledge on how to best do this. Maybe we can try to access. That's just a suggestion. The other question I had really was about when the last time there was a drill or a review in the district of the plan, when the last time the plan was updated. I know you just got here, you may not know, but as you're looking into this, do you have a sense of when the plan was last looked at, or when the last time there was a drill, or any sort of professional development around this?
The plan was updated in 2019, 2017. But also to remember, we went through the pandemic. So I think this is just coming back from the pandemic that we've taken a stop. But I also want to answer your question about a facilitator. I belong to the Connecticut Roundtable, and we did receive an email about a safety plan facilitator that can help guide your group. So I could reach out to them for that piece. But coming from training pieces, it's probably been a little bit of time since that has happened for training, but that's part of the process too of moving forward. And that's also part of our policy. So that should be part of our policy, giving timelines, like when training occurs. So that's one of the things that I've read, because I read the policy for emergency plans, I emerged about the bomb threat plans. It talks about a telephone call, but it doesn't give you update about cell phones and multimedia. So I've been reading through all the documents, and that's why it's very important that we do have a team here to really look at all of our documents just to make sure they're up to date. Although this is the second week of school starts, but one of the things that we did do was just look at the timeline, and we have a team of people that we can support and ask that around those questions. So that's why the evacuation communication form is designed. We're looking at our Aspen to make sure, because they only allow for 2 contacts. So when you enroll your kids, you only can see 2 lines for contacts. So we're trying to increase it to 4, because just in case a caregiver is at work, maybe the first 2 may not available, but the other 2 may have to be on the Aspen. So I'm working with Rebecca Nason to look at our our Aspen, to make sure that we have more contact slots for people. So those are things that you really have to look at from that piece. So it's coming, and it's just something that we have to look at.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that you're going through it and making these adjustments. I'm grateful for that. One of the things that was, I think, difficult, at least in my experience at the elementary school, was sort of like a mid-dismissal shelter in place, or something was called. So you had like half the students were dismissed, and then there's a lot of parents outside not knowing why their students aren't being dismissed, and like not even being told by anyone that there's a shelter. It's like this very strange scene. You don't know, is it for privacy? Was there an accident? You have no idea what's happening. And it was that sort of anxiety that Member Robbins was talking about was clearly on display there. So, it just hit at a really weird time, and it seemed like no one knew what to do in terms of notifying anyone at the school. So yeah, I'm grateful you're looking at all this. If the school committee can be of any help, please let us know. Thank you.
And that's where we did the emergency communication form, so we can set it all at one time, instead of just saying calling each one. We can just do an email or conversation saying, please look at this, so that we all be uniform. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Member Gazy.
Thank you. I remember that last spring, after the I believe it was the Uvalde school shooting, the school committee and the superintendent got emails from at least one student who said she was very freaked out that there had been no practice, and why not, on lockdowns and other procedures like we used to do. And Dr. Provost replied that that's because there had been COVID protocols, and we didn't want to huddle around together. So I'm glad that this incident was resolved without injury, and that it showed us where our gaps are in our safety plan, and we're moving to correct those. So thank you. I'm relieved that this has happened and we're acting on it.
Thank you. Member Agna.
I just want to echo my thanks also to you, Dr. Pearson Campbell, for having to do so many things that you've had to do on the fly in this period of time as you are settling in, and post-pandemic as well, because I know that the drills weren't happening during that time. Kids weren't even in school. And then last year, when there was a concern about having kids together, as Member Gazy said, they weren't able to restart the drills. And I had participated in many trainings and drills as a principal, and the district has been pretty vigilant about keeping current and doing best practices. And we're guided by the Northampton Police Department, who are, I think, very astute and very current in their best practices around safety in schools. And I think that since Police Chief Casper has been very involved with this will happen again. There will be the tabletop lockdown drills and all that. And I know that during the drills even, let alone a lockdown that we actually had one time, there isn't any information that can be shared, because there's a lot of concern about who might be listening and where situations might be in the schools. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I think that the main thing that we need to support administrators in doing is the debrief with the students afterwards. And that's what we would do a lot of in our school, was talk about how horrible it was and how scary it was and how now safe that we are. And there are going to be some times that I think we can't prevent that. And that's the horrible truth about being a student in schools right now. We're not going to be able to keep them from being terrified. And I feel awful saying that, but I do see the role of administrators and teachers and families in being able to support students afterwards and talk it through and have good debriefing and maybe writing some social stories and doing all kinds of work together to hopefully mitigate some of that trauma and be able to move on. And I think that the person who wrote the letter to the editor after the front page article about all the safety features of the new K-8 school in East Hampton, who said it's really unfortunate that we had to think about a feature of the school that is portrayed as very positive, is that it has automatically closing doors and all of the features that prevent a school shooter or an intruder to come in, has to be the thing that we really publicize rather than what great programs the schools have. But that is the reality now. And I think we would all we would recognize that our responsibility is working with the police department to do this kind of best practice training. And I know that that's going to be part of what's happening. And I just think I'm really supportive of you, Dr. Pearson Campbell, in trying to lead a district now post-pandemic and all the things that you're having to do. So I just want to thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Member Miller.
This is just a comment or suggestion about, as Member Agnes said, debriefing, which would only be that since I know that the students do go through drills regarding, lockdown and stay in place, that they maybe be given some direction about during drills about what they should do or not do with cell phones, etc. And maybe it would be helpful to them to understand things like, why are all the lights turned off? Just things that they might need to understand that they might not actually understand. That's just a suggestion for future, not about any past mistakes or anything like that. I think you've done an amazing job coming into this position and having to review all of this all of a sudden. So that's just a thought, and that during the drills, they might be given that. And also that I appreciate what Member Agnes said about the debriefing that happened in her school, but I want to make sure that happens with adjustment counselors leading debriefing sessions in all the schools, because I think that's essential. Thank you. And again, I also appreciate everything you've done so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Seraphy Cox.
Yeah, I have a kid who was in school that day, and I think the primary emotion that I have and had at that time was, I guess, gratitude for that. I knew that there were adults in those situations who were looking out for my kid and the kid in the district. And that of course is administrators and yourself, Dr. Pearson Campbell, but also every single teacher and every single paraprofessional and custodian and, all of the folks who are working in the offices and working in the classrooms as well. So, you have an amazing team around you, both in the alt team and in your staff. So I am grateful that we had it without incident, and I'm always grateful for debrief and for thinking about how to do things better. But just grateful for the people who were there with the students of Northampton that day. So thank you.
We do have a great team, and I call it my main floor of my office. We all work together, and I just want to say that we have such great people that work together who've been here for years, who knew the institutional knowledge that maybe I didn't know, and we all worked on together on behalf of that day. So I didn't do it by myself. It was a great team, and people have stepped up, and I want to acknowledge at the high school, although they maybe don't have a principal, we have associate principals who stepped up, and director of student services. I call it the Red Cross team. So the Red Cross team came in with the guidance counselors, everyone came in support. So this is a difficult year, but at the same time, we're all working together on behalf of kids. So I want to make sure I acknowledge everyone in our community, and our parents and our students and our caregivers and everyone. So just want to thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just echo the gratitude, and also just share that I'm very grateful of that you are working closely with NPD and Fire Rescue, and I know that they're very grateful for all of the time that you've worked on in the last week, and that the plans and the access that you are giving them to allow them to do the training that they need, and for all the drills to have happen that need to be sort of back into our usual routine. So thank you so much for working closely with them. They and I are very grateful. So if there's no further comments on this update, and I see none, we will move into executive session. We will not be coming back into open session. We'll be adjourning from executive session. Would someone like to make a motion, please?
I'll move to move to executive session. Make a motion to move to executive session.
Second.
I can read it if you don't have it in front of you.
That's great.
Member Casey. Request to enter executive session under Massachusetts General Law, Open Meeting, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and the chair so declares.
And motion's been made and seconded, and the chair does so declare. So we, again, will be moving into executive session. We say good evening to everybody. We will not be coming back into open session. So everyone else who is here, we're going to say good night. And
Member Gazy,
Yes.
Member Seraphy Cox,
Yes.
Member Stein,
Yes.
Member Levy,
Yes.
Member Miller,
Yes.
and Member Agna.
Yes.
Oh,
okay,
I'm sorry, Mayor Shara
yes.
and Member Robbins.
Yes.
Okay. Let me. Layla is going to be
Recording stopped.
calling in. You're welcome.